You know, the past little while here we've talked about fan service on the channel. No, not from me, but from the teams that we follow in the National Hockey League. We talked about the idea of the Washington Capitals claiming Jakub Vrana on waivers the other day. Of course, it did not happen, but we did say it would have been a nice fan service move. And this one right here may not be like the biggest, most outright fan service-y type of thing, but I do think that it probably does have that sort of label on it, and I wanted to make a video about it here today. So let's go over onto the Edmonton Journal website, because what they did was they published an article by Jim Matheson. Vladislav Gavrikov has huge leverage on a new deal. This is an Edmonton website talking about the Columbus Blue Jackets and a player on that team. And what they do is they kind of link the two in such a way that I thought was really interesting, because an idea is brought up that I personally would actually like to see a lot. So, let's head over onto this article, link in the description as always, and take a look at what Matheson has to say. The article talks about Gavrikov, it goes over his situation, it goes over the price for him, etc., and then it says this. The first round pick compensation price that Gavrikov will likely go out there and fetch, this is the price for doing business for rentals. Even the risk of an injury after the deal is always there. The catch is the Oilers would have to move out salary, and Jesse Puljujarvi's $3 million is still the most likely, even if he's playing strongly right now. Columbus GM Jarmo Kekalainen, a Finn like Puljujarvi, chose not to draft Puljujarvi with the third overall pick in 2016, opting for Pierre-Luc Dubois, now in Winnipeg instead. Man, talk about adding too many gosh darn commas in your sentences, but that was 6 years ago, and the Blue Jackets, who will likely be a lottery pick, have Puljujarvi's friend Patrik Laine there now. If they want to move Puljujarvi's contract to Columbus, that will come with a price too, from the Oilers' end, of course. Another asset moving to the Blue Jackets. Now, I personally don't like the way that there are so many gosh darn things that he adds commas in to make extra points out there for sentences. It just kind of separate it, man. But either way, criticizing Jim Matheson's writing aside, let's go out there and talk about this idea here, because I wanted to talk about the idea of reuniting Puljujarvi and Laine, because this is sort of an idea that I don't really know has been explored all too much. Everybody talks about the top picks of 2016 and how they've all moved around in some form or another. The only one that's still there on the same team he was drafted by was Austin Matthews. Everybody else, take a look at second overall Laine, move from Winnipeg to Columbus. Take a look at third overall Dubois, move from Columbus to Winnipeg. Fourth overall Puljujarvi, he's probably going to be on his way out, who really knows? And then you have the next picks, Tkachuk and Olli Juolevi, both ended up moving as well. But Jesse Puljujarvi is a guy that we've talked about for a while. We've talked about the idea of trading him away because of inconsistencies, because of how he hasn't really found his game, how he was supposed to be an absolute force out there on the ice. The Bison was his nickname, and he earned that. Okay, admittedly, he earned that in Edmonton, but there were still really good things to learn about Puljujarvi back when he was a draft-eligible prospect. In 2015-16, as a member of the Karpat in the Liga, he had 28 points in 50 games played and was a point per game in the playoffs. He was a big dude, he had power forward-like qualities, and he could dominate the game when he wanted to, and this was really showcased at the World Juniors of that season. Yes, as a draft-eligible player, Puljujarvi was a beast at the World Juniors. In 7 games played for Team Finland, he had 5 goals, 12 assists for 17 total points. You talk about what Connor Bedard is doing at the World Juniors this year. Hey, I mean, if Puljujarvi was a member of this year's World Junior Tournament and he had these same numbers, he would have been second overall in the tournament in points. This Finland squad in 2016 was incredible, and it was carried by guys like Puljujarvi and Patrik Laine. Take a look at the top scorers on the team at this time. Sebastian Aho, who had been drafted already at that point, had 14 points in 7 games played. Laine had 13 points in 7 games played. And then you had Olli Juolevi, who had 9 points in 7 games in the process. Apparently, Jim Benning did most of his scouting by watching the World Juniors, which is why he took Juolevi 5th overall instead of Matthew Tkachuk. But either way, Puljujarvi and Laine had themselves some really great chemistry, and they formed what was a deadly pairing alongside of Sebastian Aho at this tournament. And it was crazy to see because both of the two guys on the wings, Puljujarvi and Laine, were eligible for the draft at the same time. Like, I can't really understate how peculiar it was to have this amount of dominance from two draft-eligible players in one tourney. Laine, of course, we know what he had been for the past few years here at the National Hockey League level. Sure, he was a multiple-time 30-goal scorer, a guy who got 40 goals once, who's been kind of plagued by injuries, but who still is pretty alright. I mean, this season he's only got 16 points in 22 games played, 9 goals in the process. He's only on pace for 27, but he was out with injury for a bit, so I think there is a little bit of a pass you can give him, plus the fact that he's playing on Columbus of all teams. But with all the talks about guys like Gustav Nyquist potentially being a rental, other guys potentially being shipped out, the idea of adding Puljujarvi to Columbus and reuniting this entire duo here is one that I like a lot. In fact, if you go out there and win the draft lottery, for example, cross my heart and hope to die that doesn't happen because I want Vancouver to win it, but if this happens and you have a line of Laine, Bedard, and Puljujarvi sometime next year, that's an idea that I like a lot. And I think it could be very entertaining for anybody in Ohio checking out the hockey scene and looking for something to cheer about. Of course, Matheson is going out there and saying there needs to be a little bit more added on. It kind of is ambiguous in the language that he uses in the article as to what he's actually trying to say, but pretty much he is saying that if you move Puljujarvi to the Blue Jackets would likely want some other asset in that trade because Puljujarvi is seen as a potentially negative value asset. Now, that I'm not going to completely disagree with, but at the same time, I mean, Puljujarvi is making $3 million a season. He's got that until the end of this year. He's got 9 points in 40 games played, so he's kind of improved a little bit the past little while in terms of producing, but he's still only on pace for 18 points, which would have been a significant cut from last season where he had 36 points in 65 games played. He's on pace for half the amount of points in a significantly higher amount of games. So it's not been great for Puljujarvi this season. We've all kind of seen the transition here, plus the fact that he said in the media, the Finnish media, that he wasn't really all too confident and that he didn't really know if his future in the NHL was going to be with Edmonton or if he even had a future in the NHL in general. That's kind of a sad thought to think about now that I think about it. But either way, talk to the console your thoughts as to whether or not the Blue Jackets could acquire a guy like Jesse Puljujarvi, and if a move like this is what Puljujarvi needs to really get his career back on track. Because this was a guy that played so well under Patrik Laine, or not under Patrik Laine, but with Patrik Laine, that if you tried to reunite that together, I think it'd be a crazy good idea to just experiment with a little bit. Of course, Jarmo Kekalainen was the guy that passed over Puljujarvi 3rd overall at the draft in the first place, and it came as a shock to everybody at the time, myself included. I remember watching the draft 7 years ago and saying, oh my gosh, the Oilers, even when they don't win the draft lottery, they win the draft lottery because they get themselves a guy that could be the Jari Kurri to McDavid's Wayne Gretzky. That's how gosh darn good this Puljujarvi guy is going to be. He's got like 80-point potential, maybe not as high of a ceiling point-wise as Matthews and Laine, but he's got such a good two-way game. He plays well on the boards, etc., etc. This is going to be crazy good for Edmonton, and now 7 years later, it's like, oh, now he doesn't even know if he has an NHL future himself. So, talk to the console your thoughts. If Puljujarvi going over to Columbus is something you would be intrigued by, do you like this idea, and do you think there's a trade in the works that could be done that is a lot more straightforward than Puljujarvi plus to Columbus for whatever it is they could get in return? If you're a Blue Jackets fan, hit me up in the comments. What do you think about the idea of getting Puljujarvi? And if you're an Oilers fan, what are your thoughts on what the Blue Jackets could send you back the other way? Let me know in the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 9. And bye.